I genuinely think that the people who are toxic and the people that are narcissistic are the way that they are, and they're not authentic, is because they don't actually know how to think about death or life properly. And in the Regal Change Academy, we are going through the last parts of Plato's Apology right now. And Socrates is being sentenced to death. And we're going to be talking about why Socrates doesn't see death as something to be afraid of. And he gives a very deductive, reasoning based logic on why he thinks that this is. And it made me think about how all of the people that Socrates irritated, he irritated pretty much all of Athens, right? And think about all the people that we've irritated along our own journey. And think about the reason for you irritating those people. I guarantee you that more often than not, it was because you're being authentic. It was because you were just being who you are. Now, that's not an excuse to be socially unaware, okay? Because you can be who you are, but there's a difference between being who you are and then not knowing the difference between peace and aggression, or not knowing the difference between peace and hyper disagreement, or dissension for the sake of dissension, or peace and self-sabotage. Because there are people out there that are on this path that, yes, they're awake, but they're still sabotaging themselves. They're still, dissenting from truth because they don't have the right questions framed in their mind. They haven't formulated the thought algorithms that are appropriate to actually ascend in their spirit and to let go of the material and the matter that is in this world. Because the whole point of enlightenment is to realize that there's really nothing for you to hold on to anyway in this life. There's a great quote from Nishkamurti. Is it Nishkamurti? Kamurti? I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but I can see his face. Somebody will know who I'm talking about. But he said something along the lines of, it's like trying to grasp the water. You can't really grasp the water or the ocean. That's enlightenment. And that's what your spirit is to some degree, right? Your spirit to some degree is, is it Krishnamurti? Krishnamurti. Anyway, just thought about it. But the point being is that you can't really grasp onto anything. And sometimes if you're on this path, you might be on the way to develop a godlike mindset. But if you don't know how to actually operate in that godlike mindset, it's going to suffocate you, or it's going to completely blow your mind out of the water. And there's going to be nothing to hold on to at all, but in the kind of way that's going to be losing yourself. And you're like, when you have your spirit, when you hold on to who you are, when you know who you are, that's a completely different kind of experience. Because not only do you know what you are, you also know who you are. And when I'm talking to you right now, I'm not talking to what you are, I'm talking to who you are, right? I'm not speaking to your title of what your job is, or what your degree is, or whatever this or whatever that. I'm not talking about what you are. I'm talking about who you are. And why is that more important? Well, it's because in order to know who you are, you have to be authentic. And in order to be authentic, you kind of have to know who you are. It's a paradox, but it's a happy paradox. This is not the terrible news. This is the good news. The good news is when you're able to freely think for yourself, and you're not caging yourself in by asking the wrong questions about life. Because some people that I know are very inquisitive and they're very good at asking questions, but the level of your questions is going to equate the type of life that you're going to live. And this is also something that Socrates demonstrates just by letting the results speak for what they are, right? We still know who Socrates was and is, thousands of years later. Obviously, he's no Jesus Christ, but he's still a profound person. Socrates never wrote anything down, okay? And we still know about him. And we know about him through Plato. We know about him through Aristotle, right? We know about him through his own students, because Aristotle was a student of Plato and Plato was a student of Socrates. And there's a reason why that you know about him, okay? It's because he went to death with this complete utter assurance that he knew he was going to be okay. He knew that he cannot be a strong man without being capable of being gentle, but he also knew that he can't be a man who fears death if he's been good. Like, he really doesn't see how he's been evil or how he's been doing things wrong. So why should he fear death? And just your ability to contemplate this kind of stuff is going to irritate people's demons, man. Like, just talking about this, I can even feel right now people are like the chest is boiling a little bit. Like, maybe you're kind of uneasy. I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Well, that's your ego still trying to hold on. And there's nothing wrong with having an ego, okay? But because your ego's there to help you formulate yourself to some degree. But it's also a terrible, terrible master. The Eastern philosophies say that the monkey mind, right? They call it the monkey mind. The monkey mind is a terrific servant, but a terrible master. And you want to allow your mind to be the servant, but your heart to be from where you're living from. Because if you don't really have love, if you're not moving from a place of stillness and love, you're not going to be moving from the heart. Like, you're going to be moving from other places. And the likelihood of you, now there's nothing wrong with thinking, right? There's nothing wrong with thinking with this, but Carl Jung said something that I think is very profound. Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst from the early 1900s into the mid 1900s, and one of the most profound people I've ever had the pleasure of reading his thoughts through certain books and such. But he said that where your mind goes, take your heart with you, and where your heart goes, take your mind with you. And I think that that's very profound. And I think that, in a way, carrying on these discoveries of these people, it allows you to, like, of course, you want to be mindful with the kinds of platitudes that you are allowing to enter into your domain of reason and domain of life. But simultaneously, you want to make sure that you are, if it's wise, then you want to live by it, because it's much more wise to learn from other people's mistakes if you don't have to make those mistakes, because sometimes you're going to have to just make mistakes because you have to experience it, right? But if you don't have to experience those mistakes, it's much more wise to look at what other people did wrong and then not do that. It's really that simple. And I think that that's something that maybe, as far as wisdom goes in our society, it kind of lacks a little bit, because people, like, we reward vanity. People are rewarded with vanity nowadays in our society. And once you're able to kind of step out of the matrix, and once you realize that once you step out of the matrix, you're kind of in the middle of the desert. Okay, you're like Moses, in the desert. You're kind of like, well, shoot, what now? Like, you've kind of got to explore the place, right? You've got to go wander a little bit. Now, you don't want to be a wondrous wanderer, because in my book I talk about the wondrous wanderers, and you don't want to be one of those people, because those are basically the NPCs and the normies. But you want to be able to explore. I would think it'd be preferable to be an explorer than a wondrous wanderer. And to explore would be more beneficial for you, because at that point you're actually looking for something. Like, you're searching for something. Because if you have a place to go and you have air in your lungs and you have your heart beating, life really isn't that bad. Like, it really is not that bad. In fact, I would say that to some degree that's a form of paradise. If you just embody those things, that's a form of paradise. And I don't think uh, underestimating the health that you have, because some of you might be very healthy and some of you might not. But those of you that are healthy, I think you underestimate the power of health in your life and how health really is a form of wealth. You know, I still have all my limbs. I am in great shape. I'm in good condition. I'm not in a reprobate mind. I have a sound mind. I have a mind of renewal. Okay, I'm able to accept changes and I'm able to live out differences in my mindset. And I have that godlike mindset, and I help people develop their godlike mindset, because if you've been through some of the things that I've been through, you kind of have to have a godlike savage mindset and a godlike mastery mindset in order to get through those things. Now, it's not to say that, oh, you know, my suffering is so much worse or so much better or whatever. It's not about that. It's just that some people have had experiences that are very, very traumatic. Like, there are people out there that have had traumatic experiences that I've never had. And, you know, I feel as though it's actually a form of gratitude right now for not having to go through those traumatic experiences where I didn't need to learn that lesson, but I can see the lesson nonetheless, and I can understand it, and I can, you know, implement it as accordingly into my life. But I think that we very much so underestimate the value of what we already have. We don't really appreciate what we already have. And this is one of the other reasons you're going to piss off toxic people, is because if you can be appreciative of what you have and you can just be in a positive mood. Now, you don't need to be like this toxic positivity, because that definitely is a thing. I've been around people where you can't even talk about things that are real and that maybe seem dark to other people, because they cannot handle it. They don't have their own shadow incorporated. They haven't even glimpsed at it. They're just so away in fantasy land where everybody eats rainbows and poops butterflies that they don't even see what the reality is actually capable of. They don't even know that people can be capable of true maliciousness. Because the first time I encountered maliciousness, I had already encountered it for most of my life and I didn't even realize it. That was how much I was into the emotional, like, trauma. And there are studies, I don't know how true it is. I know what it feels like. Because I've been in boxing and I've been in martial arts and such, and I know what it feels like to be hit pretty hard physically, and I know what it's like to have an injury of sorts as well. But honestly, nothing quite seems like emotional trauma. Like, the pain that emotional trauma can go through, because it literally clouds your whole judgment. You question yourself, you question your own ability to discern reality, and that's not a fun feeling at all. You know, and it's not a fun feeling in the slightest. And the only antidote that you have to move forward in those kinds of frames of mind is to relearn how to unlearn what you've been taught, because you've probably seen it before. You knew that whatever you were being taught through your nervous system, like, if you, let's say you, for me, for example, I was a very assertive person growing up until I got into like junior high school. And it was like the assertiveness was just beaten out of me. Every time I was assertive, I would be punished for it. And I didn't know why. I didn't really understand why. And now I've relearned how to unlearn that response. So where I don't feel shame for standing up for what I want or what I need from other people or what I feel as though I'm feeling in the situation. And, you know, it's like I'm just very direct. And if that's the case, that's the case. And if it's not the case, that's not the case when it comes to how they respond. Like, for example, I'm just very direct with people now, but I'm not direct as in like an arrogant way. I don't go about it with arrogance. I go about it with humility and also a sense of just knowing what I want. It's not about, it's not really about like, oh, I have to, assert my dominance here. It's just, I'm going to be who I am and let the cards fall as they fall. It's let the chips fall where they may as well, right? So it's really not that complex and it's really not that complicated, but we make it complex and we make it complicated because of our thought algorithms. And if we can redevelop and rekindle those thought algorithms to create a godlike mindset, that's where we're going to be seeing more positivity and just affluence, I would say, in our lives in all forms and fashions, whether it's social or in relationships or business, whatever the case may be. So, with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you. Stay blessed. Peace. Until next time.